Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to this exclusive episode of In the Hot Seat with me, Franè Bass, and my wonderful guest this afternoon, Frané Lessac. How are you this afternoon, Fran?
I am wonderful, especially extra wonderful because I'm here on Montserrat.
I know. And how long has it been since your last visit?
Well, 5 years, which doesn't seem like a long time, but maybe it is.
Time really flies, because do you know
Mm,
that our first interview was 4 years ago?
wow. Wow, that's right. You interviewed me all the way to Australia, where I live
Yeah,
now.
in 2020. So that was September 2020.
Wow.
And I was just looking back at like my old interview questions and things like that. And I thought, wow, was it really that long ago?
Are we
But
going to get
here
the
we
same
are.
questions?
Some of them are same or similar. Because you can't take for granted that there are some people who are not familiar with you. So I like to give
Yeah,
people a little bit of a background.
of course.
But most of the people who would have been like, I guess, the 70s and 80s and 90s babies will be very familiar with you because of your fantastic book.
Mm.
So this year is the 40th anniversary.
Can you believe it? 40 years since the book came out. It's now that time flies.
Right? And you're also here because you're celebrating your 70th birthday.
Yes, I guess that's out now. Yeah. So it's a double extra celebration. I didn't want to be anywhere else in the world for my birthday. So here I am to celebrate
In
that in my little island 40 years.
Yeah, 70 years. That's a wonderful milestone to reach. And I know that you're feeling as hot as I am. Is Australia hot right now? What's the weather
Well,
like in
we're going into
Australia now?
winter. So it gets,
Yeah.
doesn't get, ever get so cold though. So yeah. And it's summer when the heat does come, it's a dry heat, but it still feels good to have the Montserrat hot.
Yeah, I think because the hurricane season's on its way as well, that's probably why it's a little bit
Muggy.
humid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we don't actually have a hurricane this year. So fingers
Um,
crossed. Yeah, so let's jump into it. So, guys, if you're just tuning in now, I know that some of you are just coming in slowly but surely. But if you're just tuning in, I am Franè Bass, and I am sat down today with the fantastic Frané Lessac, all the way from Australia, but truly a Monstrasian girl at heart. And today we're going to be discussing her fantastic book, My Little Island, and she's celebrating its 40th anniversary. What was the exact day that the book was published? Can you remember?
I'm going to say like today, but no, it's probably I'm not quite sure, but I do remember the day I got it in my hands because Macmillan Caribbean first published it before it went into America, and getting the copy in London and just holding that in my hand. And yeah, it was summertime, so it's very close to now.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's take it a little bit back into time about when you first became aware of Montserrat all the way in 1977. So, how
Yeah.
did you hear about the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean?
Well, this is before internet, so you couldn't really Google a place to find out about it. And the best way to find out is one of my favorite places by going to a library. And I went to a local library where I was living in California, and I knew I wanted to move to the Caribbean. I'd been to some other Caribbean islands, but I wanted a quieter island. And then I came across the Montserrat section and immediately intrigued me because they said the harbor wasn't deep enough for cruise ships and the airport runway not long enough for jets and black sand beaches, and it was the way the Caribbean used to be, and all those things immediately attracted me. So that was how I first heard about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that some of that description still stands true. It
It
is still
does.
the way that the Caribbean used to be, and
It is.
our harbor still can't really accept cruise ships.
That's what I'm feeling. It's like just like when I was here that long ago.
It's crazy, right? I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's definitely some beauty to us being, not as metropolitan as most of the other islands in the region.
yeah.
So
It does remind me a lot of when I was first here in 19. I think I was here first in 1978, and I moved here in 1979. So yeah,
Hmm. Interesting. So you came in 78 or 77, one out of the two.
78 for a first visit, and then moved here permanently in 79.
So obviously, tourists will visit an island, but what persuaded you to move here permanently in 79?
Well, I was looking for a place to move to in the Caribbean, and so Montserrat was chosen, even though I'd never been here. And when I got to Antigua, a few people knew I was trying to move to the Caribbean. They said, "No, stay here, stay here." I said, "Well, look, I still have this ticket for Montserrat, and I'll go over for the day, and I just need to say it. I'll never been here. I'll never forget that feeling when I got off that Liat plane, put my foot on the tarmac, and this feeling that I was home was just overwhelming. And yeah, and I decided then and there, I'm staying here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess because you don't know what the future holds, you didn't recognize what that feeling is, but it was really because Montserrat was always going to be a part of your story, right?
Huge, huge part of my story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say in another life, maybe I was from here. I don't know. But I just, I found this amazing affinity for the island, the people. And yeah, I never wanted to leave once I lived here too, but we'll talk about that maybe later.
Yeah, so my next question was how long did you live in Montserrat for, and
Well,
where did you live?
mm, now this sounds like a short time. It was only 5 years. And then I moved to London to try to get this idea published of a book about Montserrat. But since then, I kept coming back and forth, back and forth. I couldn't leave. I couldn't stay away long for a long time. So even though I didn't live here permanently, I'd be back quite a bit. And then it got to be every 2 years, and then the last gap's been 5 years. So
Because obviously your children, Cody and I can't remember your son's
Lou,
name,
yeah,
they were coming here from since they were for
babies,
babies,
and
more or less.
they love this place as much as I do. They get it. They love it. And maybe it's due to I feel their baby bottles with water from Runaway Gut, and so they always. But no, this is one of the most favorite. They're very jealous right now because it's one of the most favorite places for them as well. They love this place as much as me, which is lovely.
So you had been to film school just before you came over to Montserrat, but
Yeah.
what did you do professionally whilst living in Montserrat for those 5 years,
Well,
apart from the book?
well, that's what I studied. I studied documentary filmmaking, and I did make a few documentaries when I lived in LA, and that filmed in the southwest of the U.S. And so when I came here, I realized it was impractical to. First of all, there was the equipment. I didn't have the equipment or a crew, and so I just started painting. I had my house had a room overlooking Lawyer's Gut, and I set up a table there and I started painting. And I read a book years ago, by Henry Miller, Paint as You Like and Die Happy, because I never realized, I never had the confidence. I never went to art school to paint. My paintings always looked very childlike and naive style is what they called it, but I didn't know it at the time. So I started doing a few paintings and had an exhibition at Barclays Bank in Plymouth. It
Oh,
was,
the Barclays Bank. Which one was that? The first one that was near
it was across from,
Evergreen?
yep. That's the one.
Yeah, from the roundabout.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and the painting sold right away. And then with the air studios happening, all the visiting rock stars wanted to buy a painting. So I started making a living as an artist living here, something I never expected to happen, and loved doing what I was doing because I was so inspired by Montserrat. No, this place inspires me so much. I see so much on this trip that I want to paint. So
Mm. So, to date, you've written 40 books with
50,
nine
50.
50 now. Okay,
Yeah,
so
in the
you've
blink
been
of an
busy,
eye. Yeah,
been busy in the last 4 years.
yeah.
With nine. So is it still nine set in the Caribbean?
Yes, 9. And I've stopped in the library in Montserrat here, and I gave some of the copies that they didn't have. And so, yeah, so their collection's building up as well. Yeah, 9
Yeah.
set in the Caribbean. Quite a few of my first books was set here. I did one about Redondo, the Dragon of Redondo.
Mm-hmm.
Did one with Irving Burgee, the guy who wrote Deo and Jamaica Farewell. a songbook with him, and then a couple other Caribbean authors. And
Yeah.
I've always felt privileged that some other authors from the Caribbean wanted me to illustrate their books. So, yeah.
Yeah, because your type of art, as you mentioned, naive art, is very child friendly
Mm, mm.
because it's almost like, I think, attainable, if that's the right word, because you feel like that's something that you can potentially do yourself, right?
Yeah,
Because
I can't paint any other styles. People think, "Oh, you do." I can't. This is the way I see things. But I think it's very appealing to children because they can paint similarly, maybe.
yeah. Yeah, so in 1983 you published your first book, and it was a book about Montserrat called The Little Island.
That's
And
how it
obviously
came out
you
first.
mentioned that you were painting and you were making a living through painting for like the rock stars and stuff like that who were coming through Air Studios. But what inspired you to write a book about Montserrat?
The true first inspiration, not only did I have this body of work I was doing here, is I went to the local library, which was near the Barclays Bank, near the Evergreen. And I was looking for books set in the Caribbean for the children here. And I couldn't find anything for them. And I wanted them to be proud of their own place, their own unique heritage and culture. And I thought how lovely. So my initial idea was to make a book for the children of Montserrat, um, and other Caribbean islands also who relate to a lot of things that they find in the book. And then the next thing was to how am I going to make a book? Because I knew nothing at all about making books. Nowadays, people could go to workshops and they learn the terminology and the steps and to make a book. But I was doing it blindly, how to make it into a book.
So also, because obviously I was watching, because for those of you who want to get a better feel for the book, because it's very hard to find these days, you can go back on 664 and watch The Visit by My Little Rainbow. They actually read the book during the little mini documentary, and
Yeah,
the story it was a really nice story that you were able to capture the full vibe of the island in a very child friendly way. So
I actually
how
have a copy here.
oh, you have a copy there?
This is
Awesome.
your copy, but I do have some copies. I'm dropping off to the Montserrat Trust this week.
Awesome.
Um, but just to give you an example, like this is one of my favorite pictures, because it has the old T-shirts. Beautiful women and mountain chicken and Radio
Mhm.
Antilles is there. And I don't know, there's a fellow here called Kataka, and he's on a T-shirt. And the Cov Disco is on there on a poster. The disco used
Yeah.
to be around there. And of course, downtown Montserrat. Yeah, there's
So the
walking.
good thing about the book as well is that you chose to incorporate, like you said, a lot of the actual, in your own unique way, a lot of the actual landmarks and the people of Montserrat in the book. Was
Yeah,
that a conscious decision that you made at the time?
I think it was an intuitive thing. I just, yeah, because they're the landmarks, but also some of those characters are real people that I knew here. There's a picture of, I believe her name was Mrs. Diet. She had a little shop in Salem, so she's in there. And
Mhm.
yeah, I put a lot of the characters that I met and knew here when I lived here.
Yeah, and a lot of people I know that they have those, I guess, the pages from the book now
Yeah.
as paintings in their homes.
Yeah, and
So
there's also
when
scene that we spoke about this last time about St. Christopher's School is in there, and on the blackboard it has the teachers and who was the teacher at the time, Mrs. O'Garo, and all
yes.
the children's name who went to the school at the time. Yeah, there's all whopping. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I've just put some of the scenes from the book on the screen
Mm,
now. But like I said, like in the past and even today, there's loads of people who are coming forward and saying, because you captured those elements of Montserrat back then in the book, they are able to reminisce on parts of the island that we no longer have access to. So it's
precious
really
places.
interesting that it was an intuitive decision for you,
Mm,
but it ended up being something that's so important to many people to
yeah.
this day. So how does that make you feel?
It warms my heart. It does. And I speak to so many children and I share these images of what Montserrat was. But when I was here the last time, I took photographs of some of the places that no longer exist. I took a picture down in Plymouth of where the a war memorial used to be. And I said, and this is what it looks like now. And the children, I think, I say to them, but look, the Montserrat people are very positive people. They're very, they just think that things do always get better. And it's been a rebirth here since the volcano. And all that fertile land again is happening and new crops and planting. And yeah.
Mhm. And I guess it's all about being a resilient people as well.
Resilient
And
is the word I was looking for.
yeah.
Totally.
And
The
obviously
resilience.
you can't the crazy thing about the volcano is that as much as it has destroyed, it's actually grown the island as well. So it's
Yeah.
almost like an oxymoron. It's like you can't have one without the
Yeah.
other.
I don't think I know anybody else in the world more resilient than people from Montserrat.
We
Seriously.
kind of had no choice.
Yeah. But it was weird because when I did the book and I put the volcano in, I put it sometimes it sends puffed smoke and fire into the air. I wonder what it looked like if it ever erupted, but I wouldn't want to be nearby if it did. And it looks like, it is going off in the picture in the book.
Yeah, so when it was playing this morning on My Little Rainbow, I'm thinking obviously when you published this book, the volcano
No, it
wasn't
was fun.
active.
No, I
And
used to
even
go
at
up
that
there.
time it wasn't spewing any fire and
Never,
lava. So
never. I
it's
used to go.
almost like if you
Hmm,
picked up the book today, it will still be relevant because the volcano is active, or I'm not sure if you
probably.
knew something that we didn't know
No,
before.
no, don't blame me. No, no. But I used to go up there with my when I lived here all the time. We all did, and have picnics up there and hike up there. And I took the kids there and I held them over inside the volcano. And it's
I
yeah,
remember seeing a photo of your husband, Mark, with Cody and your son
they were
actually near the
in,
volcano,
they
I
were
think,
inside, right next door.
the
In there.
crater.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, obviously you've written this fantastic book. You've chosen to write a children's book. Um, but when you tried to publish the book in London, you were rejected by nearly 30 publishers.
That's
And I
right.
remember reading that you said that you even promised them that if they published it, your mum would purchase every copy.
Well, because I knew nothing about making a book, I each time I got rejected, they told me what I needed to do to get it over the line. So, all those rejections I wear as a badge of courage, and I kept going and going, and finally I had a meeting with this publisher from Macmillan Caribbean, and I told him the idea, and I had these paintings, and I got this loose storyline, but this place is so special, and there's no books out like it. And he said, maybe. And that's when I said, oh, please, please publish it. And he did. And it was the best thing that ever happened. And he was very happy because the book did really well. And then it did come out in the US 6 months later as My Little Island,
Mhm.
and which was great. And then by reading Rainbow, picking it up, it really put the book on the map. And even like Kellogg's Cornflakes had a bookmark from the show on the
Mhm.
side of the cereal box, which is in those days kids didn't watch TV and breakfast. They read the sides and the backs of cereal boxes while they ate their breakfast. So it was
Yeah,
a
and I
little
always
advertising.
look forward to getting the little toys and stuff like that in the cereal box. And obviously, they used to place loads of competitions and stuff
That's
like
right.
that. And
I don't know if they still do it. I haven't bought cereal in years, but maybe they do.
I don't know if they still do that. I don't think children even see the cereal boxes these days. They probably just see the cereal. But the other interesting thing is that you mentioned that they changed the book from The Little Island to My Little Island when it was published in the USA. What was the rationale for that?
Different editors and knowing their market. The Little Island was just a hardcover book, and it had this image of on the cover, a picture of the island from the sea. It looked like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then the U.S. did something different. So it's more like they decide they know a lot more than I do about how to create the book and package it and redesign it for America. And they also changed a bit of the words inside. And I love that because I had no confidence as an author at that point. And I think I needed an editor, and I had a real editor then. And so, yeah, so it came out a different version. So, yeah.
I think by changing it to My Little Island, it probably made it a little bit more personal
It did.
because
It
the
did.
word my makes you feel
Mm,
like, a sense of ownership, but then you are a part of the conversation. So we're going to My Little Island as opposed to the
yeah. I
island.
think it definitely warms it up a bit.
Hmm. And especially because Luca was it Luca was the
Luca.
main?
Yeah,
Yes,
the
Luca
main
was
character.
coming home. So it made it make more sense that he was bringing his. Was Luca the friend? I'm getting
Luca
confused.
was the friend, and
Luca's the friend,
yeah,
and the main character. What's the main character's name?
Luke and I. He never had a name. It was just
So
Luke
he
and
never had
I.
a name because that's the
My
thing. I'm
best
thinking
friend Luke and
Luca.
I are going to visit the little Caribbean where I was born.
So his name. So
His name was
was
I.
that down to your editing or was that?
No, I think that was in the original version too. I have to have a read.
Yeah.
I have to have a look now. Now that you, because it was 40 years ago. I gotta have a look and see.
It's interesting because I wonder if Benny picked up on the fact that we actually don't know what his name is. So maybe we should give him a name for the
I
40th
think
anniversary, Fran.
okay. Well, I think when parents read it, they can place their own child's name in there.
Or maybe that's why it ties in with being my little island. So it could be anyone's island.
Where were you when we were editing this? Yes, but it's definitely my
I
little
wasn't born yet. But
island.
that's really interesting. And as you mentioned, the book was released in the USA and then it gained a little prominence. And you've actually received numerous awards for the book, like the St. Martin's Children's Book of the Year in 1985, which was quite soon after publishing it. And
Yeah,
as you mentioned, it was
mm,
on the Kellogg's cornflakes and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
And as you alluded to before as well, you've also written other books inspired by Montserrat, including Oh Christmas Tree, Island Counting 123, and The Dragon of Redonda. But none of them, not to say that they weren't successful in their own right, but they weren't as successful as My Little Island. What do you think made My Little Island so special?
I think my connection, because it's my, like I would say, a love letter to Montserrat, it came from my head to my hand to my heart, to the heart to readers. And when you have that passion for a place, it shows in the book. Island counting is still going well, and that's also about it's even though it's could be any Caribbean island. To me, it's also Montserrat. So I paste all the pictures on places here, and I think most of my most successful books is when I have that strong connection to a place.
Hmm. And I think it's just because I think sometimes when you're starting out, you have that hunger, but you also have that sense of naivety as well. So
Mm,
because you don't have too much expectations, like you're not going into it like this must sell, or I'm trying to target a specific audience
yeah.
and stuff like that. So
I
sometimes,
yeah, I had no expectations. I just want
yeah.
to make sure that children here had a book they could read, and then other Caribbean books. And since I was publishing books about the Caribbean, so many books. It's so wonderful to see these Caribbean publishers, and oh, it's a whole library full of books set here, and books of diversity everywhere, which is so lovely. And,
Absolutely.
and I was, as I said, I was always felt honored that other Caribbean authors wanted me to illustrate their books, and yeah.
Yeah, so as we were discussing before, you're a self-taught artist, but you now describe your paintings as, very primitive art, now known as naive art. How would you describe naive art?
Self-taught, childlike, unschooled, without perspective, um, folk, well, some people call it folk art. So all those different things that some people, I didn't know it was actually a legitimate art form, that this was okay to do personally when I was doing it. So all those different words have been used to describe naive art. A lot of people, naive art, primitive art. And
Mm-hmm.
when I moved to, after My Little Island came out, and I moved around quite a bit again, I moved back to California. There was actually a specialized gallery there that represented naive art. And there's naive art galleries at other places too, folk art galleries. That's all they represented, people who paint like me in their own way.
Because that's what I was thinking. Like, what are some of the characteristics of naive art? That what does it have to fall within a specific category? Does it have to be, because it's not realistic, but
Well, it
it's
could be
also not.
whimsical, could be another word to describe it.
Yeah.
But mostly it's untrained. So you can't go to art school to learn this. Now, it's something, I have friends who could, just incredible fine artists. They could paint anything. They could paint realistic things that you would think is a photograph. They could paint abstract. They could paint anything, but they cannot paint naive art because they've taught themselves all the lessons of lighting and shading and perspective. And the only thing that I think I might add, and other people might add, is we do figure out composition and where to put colors next to each other. But anything formal after that is out the door. So it's sort of like there could be figures in there or objects that you recognize, but they're done very in a childlike way.
Hmm. Have
Yeah.
you ever considered, doing any other type of art, or actually being or have you been professionally trained to do other
No,
types of art?
no, because then I might be out of a job. No, I might not be able to paint this naive way again. And sometimes I'll do a painting. I did a book called Caribbean Canvas, and some oil paintings, a similar style, but much bigger scale, these huge paintings. And I finished the paintings, and Mark, my husband, looked at me and he goes, "That arm looks like it's coming out of that person's ear." Or I'm looking at it, I said, "I can't see that." So I actually can't see when things are weird to other people, or just could be not right. And I also like when I do buildings that I have it so you can actually see around the corner, which is impossible. But the way I paint it, you could see around the corner. So yeah, and I can't see it when I'm doing it. Realize that what I've done. So no, I haven't gotten training because of that reason. Because I like the way I paint, and yeah, I'll just
I
leave it at
guess
that.
it will, no pun intended, it will take away the naivety from your art.
Probably, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the last time that we spoke in 2020, you had been using the same painting palette for
Oh,
30
my oil
years.
paint palette. I've had that
Yeah.
for
Do
forever.
you still have it?
I still have it. I didn't bring it with me because it's heavy, but I still have it. And every oil painting I ever created came off that one palette. And it's, yeah, so that's another one of my most favorite objects is that palette because, yeah, it's built up layers on it. And yeah,
Can you remember where you purchased it?
it was a gift from somebody when I moved to London. My friend Kate gave it to me. And I'm going to be seeing her on this trip.
Awesome.
I'm gonna remind her because you reminded me now who gave it to me and when, and I'm gonna tell her. And I have a picture on somewhere, and I'm gonna show her. I still have that special palette. Yeah.
And the other thing that you also did was to feature your late cat Milo in
Yes.
most of your books.
And my
Um,
dog Banjo. Banjo makes a lot of books as well. And my
okay.
cat.
So are you still doing that to this day,
Okay.
or
Well, I
has
always feel
Banjo replaced Milo?
Banjo's the dog, Milo's the cat. Now, I'm going to share a secret here. So hopefully nobody hears or sees this. Milo passed away like 30 years ago, and
Oh
he's still
wow.
in all my books.
So so
So
where did you
it's
have
always there. So I said,
Milo?
"There's Milo." I put Milo in the window of this picture. Or, there's Milo sitting there, and I think Milo's still around, but no, Milo's not here.
Okay. Sorry to hear that you lost Milo
Okay.
30 years ago. Sorry for your
Congrats for
30-year
that.
loss.
Thank you.
So I've been long distance friends with you and your daughter Cody for the past 4 years or so. And for those who are unfamiliar with Cody Greenwood, she was actually the producer of the docu-film Under the Volcano about Air Studios. You would have been in Montserrat during the heyday of Air Studios. So what would you
Mm.
say was your fondest memory of Air Studios?
I used to, when the bands weren't there, the Air Studios was probably my second home. I was up there all the time with Minetta, the housekeeper, and all the crew there because I used to know, I got to meet all the people who built the studio. In fact, when I first moved here, people thought I was involved with the actual building of the studio. It just coincided. When I first came here, I was the same year George Martin first came here. And we both fell in love around the same time. In fact, George rented my house when I was off island. Um, so it's just being connected to that place and all the people there. And then I got to know when the rock stars would come and purchase my painting, became friends with them. And yeah, just going up there, up that long driveway and going inside, it was a special place. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously Cody came along and then she produced the film.
Yeah,
But
she heard a story. Malcolm Atkin, who's one of the original designers and helped build the studio, visited us in Australia, and we were telling stories over dinner. And Cody said, "Has anyone ever made a film about this?" And Malcolm said, "No," and she got the idea. But I have to tell you something very funny, Veneer. Today when I was out shopping, when I used to come here, people said, "Oh, that Frané Lessac, you did My Little Island." And now this trip is like, oh, that's Frané Lessac. Her daughter made Under the Volcano. I'm no longer the author. I'm the daughter. Sorry, I'm the mother of Cody.
but that's the crazy thing because that's also one of my questions, right? It's like My Little Island had played a fundamental role in your success as an artist
Put
and
me
an
on the map.
author, and at the very beginning of your career as
Mm,
well.
mm.
And then to think that Montserrat also is currently playing a major role in your daughter Cody's career. Like, how does that make you feel? Because all of that would have been what you felt
That
stepping
is
on the tarmac
amazing.
at,
It's so
out of that
amazing.
plane.
I know. It's so amazing. And as I mentioned, I mean, she loves this island like I do. And for this to happen, for her to make that film, which started her career now, she's so busy with making other films, but that was her first film. And when she came down with the crew to film it, and she was just hoping that they'd all get the island, not just come here to film this documentary, that they would also know how heartwarming this island is and the connection, and they did, and that made me feel so good. But I'm so proud about what she's created, and yeah.
So how did you feel? Because obviously, you spoke about the film that day at dinner, and then fast forward years later, she's actually gone ahead and made the film. How did you feel walking into the premiere?
Well, first of all, when she said she wanted to make a film about it was going to be her first big film, I thought, okay, yeah, right, okay, sure.
Right.
And she had to make 2 trips to London just to get permission from the Martin family, the estate, to do it. And things kept going. I go, wow, she really is going to do this. And yeah, I cried. I was just so happy. And yeah, they've done such a beautiful job. Gracie Otto, the director, was the perfect person to direct the film. And as a team, they worked hard. They had scoured they made so many trips around places to try to get as many people in. And luckily, they got it in the can right before COVID. All the filming.
Right, that's
They wouldn't have been
true.
able to make it if it was 3, 4 months later. They wouldn't have been able to get on a plane and do what they did.
Yeah, and obviously because I was involved in premiering the film
I
locally here
know.
in the island.
We're so thankful and grateful for
Yeah, and
you.
the crazy thing is that on my way from England as well, I had the same idea as Cody. So this is why I even became aware of Cody because
Wow.
I remember being at my mom's house, speaking to a friend who made docu-series for Netflix, and I was like, you know, there's something really special about our island that hasn't really been explored,
Oh,
and that is the story of Air Studios. So then I thought to myself, okay, this can't be an original idea. I'm sure I'm not the first person to have thought of this. And then that's when I went online, started searching it, and then I found Cody.
how
And I
far
was
into
like,
it were they already pre-production?
so they had just received the funding for it,
Yeah,
because this
which is
would
the
have
hard bit.
been,
That's the hard bit.
yeah. So
Right.
this, she had just secured the funding. I can't remember the organization in Australia who had
Mm,
approved the funding for the film.
mm,
So I was like,
mm.
okay, she's definitely doing it. So then that's what got me now interested in Cody, because I really wanted it to be someone who, like you said, understood the island. I didn't want it to be someone who was coming in and just doing it for profit. You know, I wanted
Yeah,
it to be
yeah.
someone that really understood. So when I started looking into Cody, that's how I came across you. And then the whole thing, I was like, yeah, she's the perfect person. So it blew my mind that in early 2019, I was looking up the film. And then in 2020, I was helping Cody, or 2020 or 2021, that we were doing the premiere for
Yeah,
it. So I was
yeah,
just
it
like,
was
wow,
incredible.
it
Incredible they
really
got it
went
done.
full circle.
Yes, and as I said, I mean, having that premiere here at George Martin's Theater, the Arts Center there, was such a special event, and we wish we could have come here because that, but then we were still in lockdown.
COVID,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, that must have been an incredible evening, and yeah,
It was a really good evening because it was very nostalgic. And I think, obviously, you know, you take for granted how much work goes into producing a film like that, but
mm,
also how much work goes into producing a film like that about an island who has gone through, you know, a major disaster, and also during a time when you didn't have the internet, you didn't have access to as much of the information and footage that we
yeah.
had. So when I saw how Cody was able to capture Plymouth and all of the footage that they unearthed, I was just amazed, because
Well,
not
that was
only,
major.
yeah, not only did it show us the story of Air Studios, it also showed us the story
Mm,
of Montserrat back then, because it
yeah,
was like taking a trip down memory lane to Plymouth. So it was really nice when we were able to invite children to watch the film as well, because they would have never seen Plymouth.
yeah. Yeah, except if they, yeah, old footage. And hopefully there's some other documentation of Plymouth that people can see. Yeah, I would hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do a lot of digging. The National Trust is also a very good source, guys. I
Mm,
apologize if you can hear a dog barking.
okay.
But the National Trust obviously has the archives for the island going all the way back
Oh,
to like the
fabulous. Yeah,
1700s.
we're going to go there tomorrow, so we'll have a good look.
But the difference between most of what the trust has will be photographs, but being able to capture actual video footage.
Yeah,
And the Rolling Stones and also the Beatles have done really well, because they've, you know, put out quite a few videos about their time at Air Studios and the police and stuff like that. But the
yeah.
other thing that really jumped out to me about the film, which really touched my heart as well, was the recording of Stevie Wonder
Oh,
at
the
the
Goody.
bar,
Oh my goodness.
and
Unearthing that was incredible.
when your husband, without knowing, without ever knowing that Cody, your daughter, was ever going to produce a film about Air Studios or about Montserrat, just so happened to have the cassette in the attic. Like, how spooky is that? Can you just tell us a little bit about that story?
Well, well, basically, that is the story that. Well, it was a famous night, and it's told in the film that Stevie Wonder was going to go down to the Goody and play, and luckily someone had a tape recorder, and he got up there and played with the band, and yeah, we. I don't know how Mark got the copy, and I didn't even know he didn't remember it for a while. But as they were gathering, we were trying to help Cody gather information. She had an archivist full time trying to get footage of everything. Paul McCartney gave Cody his home movies for the film. I mean,
Wow.
it was incredible how many people gave stuff and were able. I mean, Sting gave the first interview, and once Sting came on board, other people said they do it. But what's also precious besides that tape, that Mark had that they were able to use because I to sing along to it is that some of the people in the film already passed on. Jimmy Buffett, Hero, all those
Mhm.
a couple of people that she's already interviewed now are no longer with us.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I said to someone recently when I actually told them that,
Mm,
you were coming to the
mm,
island, and I
mm.
was speaking to Cody and I was saying Cody produced that film at exactly the right time, because
A
if
lot of
she
us are getting
hadn't, like,
older.
yeah, because if she hadn't, she wouldn't have been able to speak to, like you said, Jimmy Buffett, and even
Hero, yeah,
our local hero who
yeah,
recently
passed
passed
away. I just
away.
heard.
And Hero was actually in the band that played at the Agouti
That night.
that night. And I remember him saying that Stevie Wonder gave them so much money. They were just like, just for one gig, you're giving us all this money. Like, it
Yeah.
was absolutely amazing. And it was so, I just remember that part of the film, and that film got me really emotional at times. I remember, like, because I had a preview of the film before it was actually released. And I remember watching it with my brother, and the whole time I was there trying to pretend to be strong. Like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. But
Oh,
it was
this
a
film.
film that just, like, tugged at your heartstrings. And I think it's just because, most of us who have experienced Plymouth, we know the extent of what we've lost. But
Mm,
then to also see all of these people that, so not only have we lost, Plymouth, but we're also losing the legends as well, who were
mm.
parts of the Air Studios story. So when
It's
I saw
true,
that,
and including George Martin, of
exactly,
course.
that's true.
The other thing that makes me tear up is, and that I love, but it's also funny, is when Luther Vandross, I think his name is,
Mhm.
from Earth, Wind, and Fire. Hopefully, I'm saying his
The
name.
Earth, Wind, and Fire were separate from Luther Vandross was one person. I think Earth,
Yeah,
Wind, and
from the
Fire was,
band. And
yeah,
he said as they brought the equipment cases, the women who
in the
were brought
field
in
we're
the fields
singing.
were clapping just the cases that had the band on it, and it's like, how gorgeous is that?
Absolutely. And then also the police, I can't remember. I think it's, is it Every Little Thing We Do Is Magic?
Magic, yeah, yeah,
So that was also recorded
classic.
here. And recently, because I always post nostalgic things on
Oh,
664,
good.
and recently I had posted that video. And again, you take for granted that people have seen these things, because I'm always digging into the history and I'm so engrossed in things on the island. I take for granted that some people have never seen this footage. So when I posted the video, someone reached out to me and said that their grandmother was in the video.
Oh my goodness, is this one on the back of the truck in Salem?
Yes, this is when they were all dancing in
I
Salem
love,
and stuff
yeah,
like that.
that's a great video. Yeah,
Yeah, and then she was saying to me
her
at the
grandmother's
time,
in it.
her grandmother was working at Radio Antilles, which is obviously maybe how she was
Mm,
able to be a part of that group and to be in the video. But
yeah.
she said that she posted the video in a group chat, and it just made their whole family's day, because
Oh,
some of the grandchildren and great grands would have never seen her in her
oh,
heyday,
wow. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
so there's very poignant moments in the film, very nostalgic moments, um, moments that I need to watch it again.
yeah,
But I
I need
really
to
do
watch
love
it
it.
again as well. But one of the other things as well, because your story and Cody's story is so intertwined, because obviously most people may assume that Air Studios was destroyed by the volcano, but it was actually destroyed by Hurricane Hugo. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the paintings from My Little Island was selected as the cover album for After the Hurricane Songs for Montserrat, which was a fundraiser compilation album that was conceived by the late Sir George Martin to raise funds to benefit the island. How did you get involved in that project?
Well, George called me up. We are both back in London at the time, and he knew the painting from the book, and he asked me whether I would, use if they could use it for the cover. I was so honored to do that, to be able to donate that. But what was so gorgeous too is that he said, "Look, I'm also going to print 150 of them, if you don't mind. I'll sign it, and you'll sign it, and we're going to give to everyone involved with the concert at the Royal Albert Hall." And I was like,
Mm,
"Yes."
That's
Please.
amazing.
So yeah, so that was extra special. He was such a beautiful man, and Lady Judy Martin as well.
And
Yeah.
yeah, she's also passed away
Oh,
as
I didn't
well.
know that. Oh
Oh,
goodness.
sorry. I think she passed away in
Okay.
January, but
Okay.
early this year she passed away as well, unfortunately.
All right. Yeah. I'll
Um,
let Cody know as well. Mm.
yeah, so unfortunately they're both no longer here. But one of the things that I don't think it's from Cody's documentary, but I think it was from another documentary about Air Studios where Sir George Martin, because everybody would always say, and it's something that Cody and I discussed as well, is that, Air Studios played such a fundamental role in the island's history, even though it wasn't around for that long. And the argument has always been to bring it back and
Oh,
to revive it in some way, because now it's quite dilapidated. What's your view on that? Because Sir George Martin's view was like, you know,
go back to nature.
let it go back to nature.
Yeah.
How do you feel
Well,
about that?
when I was here in 2019, I thought it was possible to do a some sort of platform pavilion where people could look at the building and where put on headsets and listen to some of the recordings and some of the
Mhm.
interviews and maybe play. Well, now they could do Under the Volcano there or other film clips, other memorabilia. So have like a little museum at the spot. I drove up there. I know you're not supposed to, but I didn't. But it's
Yeah.
too late now. It's really from the last 5 years. What has happened? I don't think Cody and Gracie, who have had permission from the estate to go in there and film there, I don't think they could have filmed there if there was now. What has
Hmm.
happened in the last 5 years alone of it going back to nature? It's really it is definitely going back.
Yeah, because I drove up there, I think maybe a couple months ago myself, and you could almost drive straight past it now without even
Yeah,
recognizing that it was there. And then it goes back to, again, speaking of the timing of the film,
yeah,
because
yeah.
like you said, if we had waited 5 years
Yeah,
more,
you couldn't get
there
in
would
there.
have been nothing, because I remember seeing the
Hmm.
fantastic photographs with them, sitting on the diving board by the pool and
Diving
things
board's
like
not there anymore. Diving board's gone. And
that.
when we went up, the gates were locked and closed. Now there's the
Mhm.
gates. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe on that spot they could build something. It would be lovely, an interpretive center with what goes on. There'd be so many people who'd be interested in it. It's a big part of music history
Mhm.
to have something there.
Yeah, I think because I think we discussed that idea before, and I think as a tourism, like a tourist attraction, it would work out really well. I don't
Mhm.
know what the rules are around land ownership. I don't know who
Yeah,
owns the air
yeah,
studio or
yeah.
that land now. If
It'd be the
it has now
estate,
been
but
passed
even
to
the road to
children.
get up there. I mean, we're talking serious infrastructure to get it to happen. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
it
maybe
would be
George
nice.
Martin's vision was the one that what he felt, and let it go back to nature again.
And it could be that that is part of the uniqueness of it as well, right? The
Mhm.
fact that it
Yes.
was that moment in time. And sometimes, that's the nature of life. You can't hold on to everything
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah. Things evolve.
Hmm. Right. I feel kind of sentimental, a little bit emotional, just
Oh yes,
describing it in a,
I got emotional too when I
yeah.
went there. Yeah, so it's as I say, well, as we said, it was a big part of my life, and that's why I'm always back here. I'm always drawn to being back here, and that's why I'm down here for my special birthday. I didn't want to
Mhm.
be anywhere else on the entire planet but Montserrat. So there you go.
And that was actually my next question, because
Sorry, I preempted you.
you've decided to celebrate your birthday here. Obviously, it's the 40th anniversary of My Little Island as well. But obviously, maybe 20 years ago, coming back, there would have been no Under the Volcano film. And how does it feel now coming back to celebrate the 40th anniversary, knowing the impact that taking that first trip in 1978 would have had on your life all these years later. So how does it feel to be back on the island that you took a whim on? You just suddenly, like, it's just strange how life happened. You went
Yeah.
into a library,
In a s
found a
oh, yeah.
book about Montserrat, which is probably one of the most obscure places to even find, deciding to come here and live a year later, spending 5 years here, writing a book, not even being able to really draw because your background was
Doesn't
filmmaking,
Yeah, yeah.
and then your daughter, who you were bringing here all the time, goes on to make a film about your little island. Like, how does that all feel?
Well, it has to be destiny, it has to be fate. I never This is an amazing the way you describe it is, just so peculiar in a way. I never would have imagined what, although I never ever wanted to leave once I was leaving here in 84ish, late 83, 84. When I was leaving, I never wanted to leave. So I knew I'd always have this strong bond with the island. And, and then as my children, I made sure they knew this strong bond too. And they also feel the same way I do. They're sitting back home right now, very jealous that they're not here with me here. I would, yeah, there's too many little ones to fly with. But yeah, no, I never would have imagined 20 years ago, 40 years ago, that I'd be back here right now talking on a computer to you on this thing, because when I lived there was no fax. I had intimate phone, that was it. No fax, no internet, nothing. It was before email. There was no courier service. We had nothing. We had nothing. We had no TVs. TVs just started to creep in when I lived here. And look at what we're
Mhm.
doing right now. It's
It's
wild.
crazy because I remember back in the day, like, which would have probably been like the late 80s, early 90s, going to a neighbor's house to watch a TV, or everybody cramming into one house to watch the NBA basketball games
Yeah.
or wrestling and stuff like that. But speaking of children as well, you're now a grandmother, right? So have
Born
you
very
shared
quickly.
have you
And
shared this book
oh yeah.
with your
And I
grandchildren?
got them all little Montserrat t-shirts to bring back for them, and hot pepper sauce, and I got them everything they need.
You're not taking them hot pepper sauce, are you?
Of course I am. I'm taking everything possible for them. Um, yeah, so I will be bringing them all back here, every single one of them, and I'm going to put that water in their baby bottles or whatever. So this place will be part of their lives too, because it's a legacy, really. They have to.
Yeah, and that just reminded me of a story, actually. I think you told me this story during your last interview. I think it was when you were here with Cody and you were on a hike somewhere and you
Oh,
met a mother and the
that
son. Can
I was
you tell
hi-
us this story
yeah,
again, please?
I was hiking up the center hills, and it's a pretty steep hike. And a couple were coming down with a young boy. He must have been about 7, I think, six, no, 6 or 7. And so we stopped and we chatting. Where you from and what are you doing? And they said, "Oh, we're here because my son was a reluctant reader, and then he read his very first book. It was called My Little Island, and it was set here. So we decided to bring him to the island as a celebration that he finally learned to read." And I said, "That's my book. I wrote that." And I think we both cried, and it's like, what's the chances, really? So that
What's
was
the
a
chances of
beautiful
you
moment.
being on the island at the same time? The chances of them being on the island, and then the chances of you being on a hike in the
I
middle of
know, and
nowhere and
that's what
bumping into them.
and that's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to, make stories or books to inspire children, or to for this to happen, and it did, and that was one of those magical moments, really, for me. Made it everything all worthwhile, going to those 30 publishers to get this book out, because and look at that, then that happened. So yeah, it was very, very special.
So what does the future hold for you, Fran? I know obviously you've come to celebrate a significant birthday. Will you ever retire from being an artist or an author? Because obviously in the last 4 years since we've spoken, you've added 10 more books
Yeah, I
your,
was
to
busy.
your catalog of books.
But,
So what
mm,
does the future hold for you?
I don't think it's something that one can retire from. I might you do maybe less books, but it's something that I'll always be doing is creating stories or books for children or painting anyway. And every chance I get, I'm trying to catch up with people that know this island. I'm doing a very special trip for my birthday here. I'm here for my birthday, but I'm seeing friends that I know also from Montserrat are living other places along the
Awesome.
way. And so my future holds, I will, hopefully, I would love to do some more Caribbean books. So maybe that future's for me. Somebody mentioned I should do a book. Maybe it was you who about since the volcano to do
Mhm.
another book about the island, my island with my big
My little
volcano,
volcanic island or
my
my
little
little
volcanic
volcano.
island, or saying, do a
That would be
sequel,
great.
do a sequel about the island now with the volcano and everything that it has produced and made and changed, maybe.
It's interesting because, like we said at the beginning, the volcano wasn't active at the time when you wrote the book, but somehow you had included it in the book, which almost makes the book evergreen and still relevant.
Hmm.
But maybe what we would do now is it's almost like the rebirth of Montserrat. So it's the new Montserrat because
Yeah,
obviously we'd
showing
never be able.
all the great things like the new land that's been formed,
Hmm.
and the you could walk through old Plymouth, and there's things that are special now. And there's an artificial reef that's been built off of here now to go snorkeling,
Hmm.
and I'm discovering all the new places and the things that are going on here that didn't exist
Yeah.
before.
So do you actually have any new books in the works that are due to come out soon or
I've had a couple come out this past year, but I have one about a cattle muster set in Northwest Australia coming out later this year.
what is it? What is it? A
Yeah.
canal muster?
Cattle musters, when muster, they get cattle together,
Okay,
like
cattle. Okay.
cattle. But also, Cody's trying to call. I'm going to decline her right now. But
Bye,
also,
Cody.
and we could have brought her into the interview.
That's
Um,
true.
but Mark and I are working on some other books together that are in the works. One about islands. So fingers crossed that one gets over the line because we'd love to include Montserrat. It's a book about islands for kids. So there's something in
Mhm.
the works too. Fingers
You
crossed.
definitely have to do something to mark the anniversary. Or at least if it's not the 40th, definitely something for the 50th, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. So before we bring this interview to a close, is there anything that you'd like to say to the people of Montserrat before we end the interview? And also just tell us a little bit about where people can find you online because I don't think that you can't purchase My Little Island anymore,
Well,
can you?
I'm dropping 25 copies off at the National
National
Trust here
Trust.
in Montserrat, but I found a place, but you have to buy 25 at a time, which is okay for me, but for other people, I don't know. Maybe people have businesses, they could do that, buy 25. But I'm very easy to reach at franelessac.com, Frane at FRANELESSAC.com. So I'm easy to reach that way by email. People, please email me. I wanted to say to the people of Montserrat that I love you so much, and that I'm so happy to be here. And I'm only here till Wednesday. If you see me, please say hello because that's what I love about being here is waving to everybody, saying hello, hugging anybody, and I'm just so happy to be here. As I say, it's my most favorite place on the entire planet. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, and it was also great to meet you yesterday in person for the first time. So it was an absolute privilege, and I'm so happy that you've chosen my platform to share your story as well. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the opportunity. We had someone here saying, "Brilliant interview, amazing guest." I can't believe she's 70. That's Richard Gian Freddy. So hi, Richard. Oh, do you know Richard?
I know, Richard. I paid him to say that. No, I didn't.
So, Richard, thank you so much for watching. Celeste, Agaro, All It Ryan, everybody who has tuned in and everybody who will tune in after this. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
tuning
Veneer.
in.
Thank you so much. I so much enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic conversation, and
Mm.
maybe when we hit 50, I might be in Australia with you.
You're welcome anytime. Your room is there, so please come down and visit.
Yeah, I actually need to journey over to Australia at some point. So thank you so much for the invitation. But I hope that you have a fantastic evening, and I look forward to celebrating your birthday with you tomorrow.
Thank you once again, Franè.
You're welcome. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I will be on ABS TV tomorrow in Antigua. So look out for some information and probably the footage of that as well. Also, if you haven't checked out my new show, Women of the West Indies, I encourage you to go over and check that out. It's a new show about women of the West Indies, and it's all about sharing this fantastic stories, stories of triumph, stories of loss, stories of success. So definitely tune into that for more great conversation with more phenomenal women. But until then, I hope that you all have a fantastic Bank Holiday Monday, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take care, and thanks for tuning in.